Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction and recovery. Join your hosts, Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, as they break the silence and speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your Friends in Recovery.
Hey everybody, welcome to friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. I am the Podfather, Mike Miles.
I'm Jersey Ed.
You Jersey Ed?
I am Jersey Ed. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I can't complain. It's my bones ache. I ran a little bit this morning. I'm doing okay.
Yeah, you can't complain. You just complain.
I've been complaining since the whole day with you guys here. So
yeah,
but you know what? That's what recovery brings me. You guys can go to a meeting and just leave me the fuck alone. Then
how's Sweet's doing?
Doing fantastic.
Good to be here. Beautiful, sweet studio. I love this place.
We just keep making improvements for you guys.
I'll tell you, it's so cozy, and I just love it.
it's amazing what the studio became, right, guys? I mean, no more background. We got this lovely board behind us now.
So for any of you that watched the first video,
yes,
the new studio. Well, the new studio here it's gotten better in the last few episodes.
Absolutely,
yeah,
it gets better every week.
Yeah,
yeah.
Every week.
Yeah, exactly,
Do good work.
We were, absolutely. But we're happy to be back in the studio here with Sweets. And, I got to take a minute and talk about Sweets here. He adds a lot to this podcast. And, some of the other shows in the past, we did well. But Sweets brings another dimension to this podcast with his recovery and his bald head and
another bald head.
Another bald head. But
two bald heads are better than one, right?
Right.
But you know what? And also when I come into the studio every week and see you guys, it's like a meeting to me. This is like, very comfortable, very very relaxing. I know it gets a little tense before we start the podcast because we don't know what we're going to say or what we're going to do. But we know when the mic goes on and the cameras come on, we know that's all going to go away. It's going to be very relaxing, and we're going to kind of settle down a little bit and get into all this. And that's what recovery teaches us. If I was out there running around doing everything, first of all, you would never fucking find me. I wouldn't be here on time. That's number one. And number two, I'd be giving you guys orders, telling you what to do. It would be a nightmare. So we have a very good rhythm going on in here. And if some of the back stuff, behind the scenes stuff, it gets a little hectic, but this new studio is excellent. So that's enough about the new studio. So
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So we have a guest today, Ed?
We do. He's sitting to my right, your left on the screens, and Jason Snook. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing well. Thank you, fellas, for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Before we talk about Jason's life and the destruction and the rebuilding of everything, as I think we all do that here. But I want to go over some business as usual. We want to thank Genesis House for this lovely studio, Sweets Podcast Studio. Without Genesis House, we wouldn't be able to do this. And in addition, I'd like to talk about our community events around the country. There's basically what they are is just alumni or meetings that take place throughout the country that anybody's more than welcome to come to. One we have in Voorhees, New Jersey, is up and running now, and Palm Springs, Florida. And if you need more information on any of those, just shoot us an email or a Facebook message or whatever. Coming soon, we have Lowell, Massachusetts, and Newtown, Connecticut. That's starting in January, and those two meetings will be up and running. And don't forget, we are powered by your likes, follows, subscribes, and shares. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and any of our social media. That helps get the word out and keeps this show going. Also important is that you leave a review. So just click down at the bottom of this where the show notes are, or past the show notes, and leave a review. And that gets the word out even more. It gets us kind of out there to get the show more and more present, more and more out there. Whatever. You know what I'm saying. So. And I am not a social media person, so I don't know what the fuck that is. All right, I was just told to make believe I'm reading it. Just remember, we're always looking for speakers to share their stories, professionals, whatever. We want you guys to come in here, just like Jason's going to share his story, just so we can get the word out about recovery and how we do it one day at a time. Back to you in the studio, Mike.
Well, that was easy.
Well, hey, listen, I'm not done yet, man. I got a podcast pick of the week right now, and this one's a good one. Let me tell you. Remember, this show's about me, all right? Was I supposed to check my ego at the door? One of my favorite podcasts besides this one and our other one is called SoberPod. This is the podcast pick of the week. It is hosted by Carl, Ellen, and Steve. Now, this is a weekly podcast on recovery from three different perspectives of three different points of views. And I think you guys are going to like this. I don't know if any of you guys listened to this yet, but Carl is an agnostic, okay? Ellen is the believer, and Steve is an atheist. And it's amazing to hear the three different kind of views of the 12 steps in their eyes, in each one's eyes. So
and these people are all in recovery yet?
All in recovery. They state there. It's a great. I don't want to talk about it too much more, but listen to it. SoberPod. It's called. You can find it on any of your podcast catchers. And I was thinking we should go to that kind of format. He can be left.
Well, I like everybody having
No, I'm not going to be left. Trust me.
I like that everybody has the ability to speak up about a different side of that.
It's pretty cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, yeah. And once one goes off, when the girl goes off on the God thing, the atheist starts hammering in, and then the agnostic tries to pull it all together. It's a really good show. Not as good as ours, but it's really good. So,
but I bet the one thing they can all agree on is the recovery aspect.
That's the key. Right in the literature of AA, they talk about the agnostic, they talk about the atheist.
Yeah.
In the readings, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because there are a lot of people that don't believe in whatever their higher power is. It doesn't have to be a spiritual awakening. Yeah. It could be anything. Yeah. But
they were talking about step 11, and I was like, well, I wonder how they're going to pull this one together. Yeah. But they did it, and they asked the atheist, and he did a pretty good kind of talk about what he does, and he called it more of a meditation than a prayer. So it was cool. They curse a lot, which I think
that's fantastic.
It is fantastic. The believer doesn't.
I mean, that's what my recovery looks like. That's
right. That's right. So, but anyway, so that's my podcast pick of the week.
Is that it?
I can go on if you want. It's up to you.
All right.
Listen, I know how to talk, Mike.
So, Jason, how you doing over there?
Hey, Jason.
I'm doing well.
Welcome to the show, Jason.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, Aware Recovery Care is a year-long program, and we are delivering substance use disorder treatment directly into the home. Now, up in New Hampshire, I had been working in the treatment fields for quite some time, and our state, along with many other states, I'm sure all other states, has been recognizing that there was a lot of gaps in treatment, right? There are a lot of holes where people are just falling into, and Aware Recovery Care is designed to catch people who are falling through these gaps, so where there's a lot of barriers to treatment, whether it be transportation or childcare or any type of legal issues, right? We are there to work with individuals out in the community, and when I saw what they were doing, I just needed to jump aboard.
Oh, sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I could see this working for people who are a little skittish about coming into a meeting or going into a therapist's office, like professionals, even high-profile guys that don't want to be seen or maybe not ready to be. I'm Ed, I'm alcoholic, and be out there yet. You know what I mean? I'm guessing you see a lot of that too.
Absolutely, we have the ability to be able to work with a lot of first responders. Actually, people who don't really get down on doing group activities with other people they may potentially worked with out in the community, right?
That's a story for another show.
Sure.
So Jason, I have a client who's on an ankle bracelet, and he can't leave his home. He can go to a doctor's appointment. He can go to probation. He can go to the market. Very, very limited ability to travel within the city. So have you had anyone like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we work with people from probation, parole, anybody on diversion programs, anybody with physical limitations also, keeping them from going to a traditional treatment. Yeah, we've worked with them all.
It's amazing.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So innovative. It really sounds like something that might be the future of recovery, because when I think of going to meetings back in the day when I first started, I was a cop, and going into meetings where the city I worked in and grew up in was very difficult. But I did it because I had no other choice. But I could understand why first responders, would be a little apprehensive about going to a meeting, especially like a firefighter or a cop. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Jason. Do you encourage, does your company encourage AA, NA meetings also? And how do you get around that if you guys do?
Absolutely. So I'm a big book thumper myself. I'm a person in long-term recovery.
Oh, you are?
And I became...
great. That's why you're at the show?
Yeah. So I became a student of the big book back in 2011.
Good for you.
Our program, however, we have the unique ability to be able to create individualized treatment programs for each person that we're working with, because we're working one-on-one with our entire team with this one person. So we believe in all pathways. Anybody who wants to take a particular journey, we will advocate and support them along with that. But if somebody does want to go check out some AA meetings, NA, CA, whatever it may be, we will absolutely support them. Not only we will support them, but we will actually bring them to those meetings, sit with them, and help support them best we can.
And most insurances cover this?
Sure. So we're fully in network with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield right now, and a lot of other Blue Crosses. Since we're such a new, innovative model of treatment, a lot of insurance companies out there don't really know what we're delivering into the home, right? And to tell you the truth, a lot of insurance companies out there are a little hesitant, a little skeptical on paying for an entire year program, even though what does the research tell us, right? Longer somebody's in treatment, right? Better sustained chances.
Well, one thing we know for sure, working with insurance companies is difficult at best, and but you have the big one, Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, that's that's one of the biggest, especially here in New England.
Yeah, Sweets, how would that work into what you do as far as an interventionist, and you do monitoring and all that? Would that be something that you can see yourself using somewhere in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's a large percentage of the interventions that we do where the individual probably needs to go into residential care. But as an aftercare model or something like that coming back to the home, there's always some need for monitoring or testing or support that a lot of times the family just can't provide, or the individual doesn't know how to put together for themselves.
Yeah. And then now, do you guys work with interventionists like Sweets, Jason?
Absolutely. We have the ability to be able to collaborate with almost anybody out there working in the field of treatment, recovery, prevention. We do value inpatient detox programs because we do need that stabilization period, right? However, what we see is upon being returned back into the community, that reintegration process doesn't happen very, very smoothly. So that is where we tend to step in. And we are a full continuum of care. However, as Sweets was talking about, people do view us as an aftercare program to a higher level of care.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that working wonders for some of our folks that come down to Genesis House. Just because some of these guys, again, they get out, they're a little skittish and they're a little afraid of maybe trying to, getting out to a therapist. The other thing too is it's on their turf, not your turf. When I went into therapy, I knew I needed to go into therapy. I went in individual therapy, extra care health services. John Kelly, how you doing? But he, when I walked in that building, man, it was a little scary. And then you had to go meet these other people. He wanted me to go to groups, and I had to do it all that on my own. I had to figure it out all on my own too. So maybe coming on somebody's turf at the beginning to get them comfortable. Would you encourage them to go to like an ILP afterwards, or is that a goal that you guys have to get them in into an ILP?
Absolutely. So we actually created our own billing code, so we can simultaneously have somebody in our program and in another level of care, whether it be outpatient program, right, licensed independent therapists like Mike, some type of ILP. Yeah, shout out to Mike then. Another ILP, even a PHP program. So we were specifically designed so that individuals wouldn't have to choose between one or the other, right? It can be a collaborative effort on everybody's part.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So the insurance companies, as we know, they're difficult to work with at best. And this seems to me to be almost like a no-brainer. People can call their insurance companies, get them on board. Are you getting a lot of resistance? You said you only have the Blue Cross Blue Shield, Blue Cross Anthem. Obviously, there's a lot more insurance companies out there. Are you getting a lot of pushback?
Yeah, what we're seeing is a lot of other payers out there. They see the need, right? They see that a lot of people out there, I mean, are being negatively affected by this crisis of the opiate epidemic.
Absolutely.
And they see the research. They're not naive to it. And even though they're seeing the same individual in their care going in and out of inpatient, sometimes several times within a year, they still have a hard time seeing the big picture that an entire year of continuous care may actually be part of the answer.
Right.
Listen, guys, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we get back, we're going to find out a little bit more about Jason and what he is doing in his personal life now. Mike.
Friends in Recovery Podcast. We'll be right back.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Friends in Recovery Podcast.com. And we're here with Jason Snook. Jason, tell us a little bit about your own personal life and your own recovery. You're a very interesting guy. You brought really a lot to the show today.
Absolutely.
It's been a really good show.
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So like I said earlier, my recovery started back in 2011. It's when I became a student of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm an AA guy, Big Book thumper. And my journey started when I was in my last stint of county jail up in Rockingham County Correctional Facility, and I was in a 28-day rehab program up there called the STAR program. I have no idea why they call it the STAR program. I didn't feel like a star, you know. But
you ever notice all these recovery programs are called something like positive, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing here? This is bullshit, man.
Yeah, sure.
You want me to stop drinking? Come on. Hey, fuck you. I'm in jail, all right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got me already. Yeah. And so this gentleman came in off the street on his own free time, mind you, and told me I didn't have to live like that anymore. And I had social workers and psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health counselors, all telling me these kind of things. But it wasn't until this gentleman who came in, I think he was a carpenter or something, and he told me that I didn't have to live like that anymore, and I finally believed him. And so I did exactly what he told me to do. I got out. I went through the 12 steps very, very rapidly. And for 5 years, my life got incredible. I went to school and I worked my way up to get a master's degree. I got my license back after 5 DWIs. I started bringing people to meetings and watching the light start turning back on their eyes. And life got beautiful, right? Life got beautiful, and I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, right? However, at 5 years, I now have a master's degree. I'm working out in the fields, and I'm getting paid to work with people with substance use disorders every single day. And as we know in recovery, if I don't give this thing away freely any longer, it kind of loses its magic, right? And so that's exactly what happened. I started working the steps backwards, and there goes step 12. I'm no longer giving this work away freely. And I don't have time to pray and meditate, and I'm not taking a daily inventory of myself, and then everything just kind of becomes put back on everybody else.
That's
right?
taking the elevator down, I think.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so after 5 years of being in recovery, I went back out, and within 2 months of being out there, I was once again roaming the streets of Lawrence, Massachusetts, trying to find myself bags of cocaine and heroin so I can shoot. And I have a master's degree specializing in addiction, mind you.
Yeah.
Right?
Now this disease does not care.
Doesn't care.
I was having a conversation with, I think it was either Mike or somebody. I forgot who it was. Or Sweets. It doesn't matter what your education. It doesn't matter. How much money you have, and that's a perfect example, Jason, of what this disease can do to us. You were a person helping people out, telling people what to do and how to do it, and you're back on the streets of Lawrence, and you're fucking shooting dope again. I mean, it doesn't care, and that's so important. What you just said is to make sure you stay close. Keep your. I think this is a Podfather quote. Keep your sobriety close to the vest. Once you don't do that, that's where you end up in hell again, Sure. And how quick did you go down, and was it worse? Because everybody says it's worse. It gets worse. It's you're back right where you started, if not worse.
Absolutely. I believe this is a progressive illness, right? And one of the things that made it significantly worse, exponentially more difficult to get back into recovery, is stigma, right? We hear about stigma all of the time, and here I am, a professional in the fields, sitting in my office working with other people with substance use disorder, and I've gone out in my last week of working in an organization as a therapist. I had been shooting up on my way in to go work with these individuals, and why couldn't I tell anybody? Right? Why couldn't I just go to my supervisor and say, I needed to keep it a secret? Why? Because society and
Sure.
is putting so much shame on me that I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be looked down upon, that I'm a liar, that I'm a failure, right? And that's why I wanted to come on this show, and I go on other podcasts and TV shows to talk about my story and to try and get it out there so that we can all start removing the stigma.
Right. Well, this disease works on our self-esteem. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
It knocks it right down and kicks you right in the balls and says, you're not going to do it. You're not worth it. You're definitely not worth it. And that's what this disease does. But that's what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous does. It builds our self-esteem up. It makes us work on that, and it makes us become proud of who we are and what we do. And I think, like you said, the minute we forget that, it just takes us down again. So,
Jason, how'd you get back on the wagon? What made you? Obviously, we know what made you come back, but how did you do it? What were the steps you took?
Sure. So I actually ended up back at that same exact jail in protective custody. I actually ended up in 3 different jails in protective custody. Ended up in 4 different hospitals. Put my car into a bunch of guardrails and Narcaned back to life a couple of times. And almost lost my right arm, and so this was a little over 3 years ago, and I finally had my bright light experience again when I was locked up in a psych ward. I'm a United States Navy veteran, and so luckily they put me into a psych ward down at the VA hospital over in Bedford, Mass, and that's exactly where I ended up finding recovery again. And you know what it was? It wasn't those professionals that was coming to visit me on a daily basis, right? It was other people coming in off the streets and reminding me that I didn't need to live like this any longer.
Commitments, going on commitments in AA was so important. Early recovery, my sponsor was a huge recovery guy, and his big thing was always going on commitments. And we used to go to this place called Long Island. It was in Boston.
Oh yeah, Long Island.
And we were the only white guys in there. And in the beginning, I was early. It was early recovery for me. I was really nervous, but I got to tell you, I've been on so many commitments over the years, and in hospitals with people wearing foam slippers and bathrobes, and just jonesing for a cup of coffee. And that was so important.
Yeah.
And listening to people speak about how good life was. And it doesn't matter whether you have tons of dough or you have new cars or whatever. What really was important was that a day at a time you can get sober.
Yeah, and also by going on those commitments, you're helping a person like Jason. These guys were helping Jason, but also we're helping ourselves, like Mike was saying. But you don't know, like those guys who came in and did the all the talking to you and doing everything that they needed to do. They don't know that you're on a podcast now. They don't know where your life is. I remember walking into a boys' prison in New Jersey and doing it was like from like they were like 17 to 20-year-olds, and they were all in their suits. They were all in their their slippers and all that, and it was in this broken down old building, and it was this crazy setting that we had to go into. And those kids were just scared, and they were looking forward to hearing the message that we had. Some were, some weren't, but it was, for me, it was the toughest, hardest thing I had to do, to walk into that building. But to hear your story, Jason, and to understand it, maybe one of those kids got something out of it. I don't know. I don't know, but hopefully there's a Jason somewhere out there, talking right now about his recovery, because that bald-headed tattooed fucker showed up and said something, whatever. I don't know. So, but anyways. I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll tell you what, I still bring in that same commitment to that jail, to
Good
the
for you.
STAR program.
Nice.
And I know that so this program works because we're not all sick on the same day, right? and so those 5 years when I'm bringing commitments to others and I'm helping others, I don't know, there may be somebody that I've reached within those 5 years that then turned around and was able to help me when I fell back off the wagon, right?
And we know, there's no coincidences, and
No
I
coincidence.
think
No.
I think every recovery has a purpose. Every slip has a purpose. In early being a therapist in the very beginning, my first client was a heroin addict, a mother of three, wonderful lady, and it happened on 9/11. My first day working at Arbor Counseling was 9/11. I had done my internship there, and they hired me because they didn't have a lot of male therapists. And my first client was a young lady. Her first name was, it doesn't matter. But anyway, I will always remember her because she was shooting dope. She had 3 kids, and she just couldn't stop. And I said to her something I had heard in AA, and it was, "Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired?" And she started crying. She said, "You know the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
I am sick and tired. I just don't know what to do."
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, getting into recovery, 3 children, what are you going to do? No one to watch her kids. Her family were all in New York. And we figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that woman's sober today, and to me, 19 years later, this woman, her life is just remarkable.
Yeah.
I really believe sometimes a slip or going back out there, especially now you have 3 years, it's amazing. Listening to you speak and what you're doing today, it's so innovative. I've never heard anything like the program you discussed earlier.
Well, I always bring this saying up about Thomas Edison. He says that his best success was his worst failures. Mm-hmm. And if we don't learn from those failures, we don't keep that green. I mean, all of us here have way over 70 years of time together, but it doesn't matter. We do it one day at a time. And if we don't keep it green and we don't think, we don't hear stories like Jason, or get to a meeting and hear stories of that guy walking in, or that phone ringing and picking up and talking to that alcoholic, we can take that elevator down. We can get on that same elevator you were on,
Mm-hmm.
and We choose not to do that today. That's a choice we have today. We choose not to do it. And again, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, we come in here and we, there's a meeting before this podcast that comes on, and it keeps me, happy and sober, and I look forward to doing this all the time. And
well, I love coming to speak with gentlemen like you. I need people in my life nowadays because I can't do this on my own. And it's kind of like the saying of Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, right? And so when life punches me in the face, if I'm on my own, I'm in bad trouble. So that's why I need fellas like you in my corner to be able to keep me accountable and to hold me up when I start stumbling. Right.
The worst place is to be alone in our own heads, man, and that's not easy. It's not
painful.
Easy. It is. It's the right word for it. Yeah, it's painful. It's a tough place. And that's what the program teaches us, to get out there and you actually came on the show last minute. And this, I was not expecting to hear this story. This is the twist that God throws in our lives, is that I wasn't expecting to hear this story. We were going to do something different, and late last night I get a call saying this is who's coming in, and I'm like, I don't know this guy. Who the fuck is
he?
Some
redhead ginger.
Yeah,
coming
exactly.
On the show?
What the
I don't know
fuck?
about that.
Come on. I mean, really. But
You're a ginger?
Ginger American is the preferred nomenclature these days. So.
Excuse me. I'm old school.
He's a redhead, Mike. But no. So this is the twists and turns that life always brings us, and it brings me back to like going to like even sitting in a hotel room or sitting on my couch at home, and then you're like, I'm just gonna get up and go to a meeting. You weren't expecting to go to that meeting. You weren't expecting to do whatever, and you go and you're like, holy shit, man, I really needed this fucking meeting. This is right in my wheelhouse, and this is what I needed to hear. And this is it. This is that moment. Like, holy cow, we need to hear this. That's kind of how God works.
There's a saying in AA: when I'm alone, I'm in bad company. And I worked many nights alone before I found recovery, and boy, I made some bad mistakes. When I found recovery, I knew that was a trigger for me, not to be alone. So I would do anything I could to be in the presence of other people, other cops, other partners. And as a result of that, I ended up driving the police wagon for 3 years, picking up people just like you were just discussing, people that are just hopeless and helpless,
just like Jason.
Yeah, and and I would talk to them, and it was early recovery for me, and I was I'd gone back to school myself, but it was almost like a gift to be with people like this. And I had people that were throwing up on themselves, urinating on themselves. I mean, it was awful. But I got to tell you, I look forward to going to work every night because I felt like I was being useful, and. Yeah, I really do believe when I'm by myself, I'm in bad company.
Yeah. And when we're guiding people into the, into the path of the fellowship. I mean, even if they don't even know it, we're kind of guiding them through, and that's working the program. Even kind of just getting somebody to understand or listening to what maybe we have to say. We have a lot. We have a lot of knowledge, and sometimes like I always said, I always kind of wear my recovery on my sleeve, and all of us in this room do. And because I never know what I'm going to hear, or maybe you never know who I'm going to help. And I tell everybody about the program and tell them I'm in recovery, because who knows? I mean, again, that statistic I always bring up: 1 out of 3 people knows somebody, or that person is an addict or alcoholic, and we can help them just by saying it.
We can help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just wanted to say one more thing. I know we have to wrap up, but it's something that Mike was talking about earlier about the slip, right? And how powerful that can be in our life. That isn't a setback, right? It is a setback if we view it as that.
Right.
However, it made me exponentially stronger in my recovery. It brought me closer to you guys. It brought me closer to my higher power, and it brought me closer to the way that I view life nowadays and the value that I have for it.
Yeah. So, real quick before we wrap this up, Jason, when we talk about going back out, you always end up where you're at, and then you can go down the rabbit hole again. When you came back in, did you pick that back up right you were at, and then super enhanced your recovery and went balls to the wall? I guess I don't know if that's the right saying, but
sure. It's called the balls to the wall meeting is what I went to. I actually started doing Big Book Step Study, which is just a much more thorough process of the 12 steps. That's all. And there might have been something that I left out before. There might have been something that I hadn't done, and so that's exactly where I went with it. Right?
Yeah, good. Well, fascinating story, Jason. And again, God works in mysterious ways to bring people into our lives, and that just happened. So, and I hope this happens to everybody out there listening to this. Sweet, do you have anything that you want to say? You're kind of quiet back there.
I'm just listening, man.
Pretty good, right?
Yeah, I like the, relapse does, or that slip does lead people back into treatment. That you realize what you missed. You realize you missed something, and that you got to go back and figure out what it is.
Yeah. Sometimes we're all on that first time winners, man. And you just learn from it. So
that's it. Friends of Recovery podcast.
Jason, thank you very much.
You got it. Thank you, fellas.
Stay sober, everybody.
Thanks, Jason.
That concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for supporting those on the path to recovery and for keeping this valuable resource free for our Friends in Recovery community. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, email us at help@friendsinrecoverypodcast.com. If you can't get enough of Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, you can catch them on Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast, available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube.